Return of the Mount Hua Sect, Chapter 241. To give us this so generously. A bomb had fallen on Mount Hua. What does this mean? To make a merchant chamber in Sichuan. What? The swords made by the Sichuan Tang family are going to come here. Well, then, what do we do about them? Should we store them in the storehouse? What about the rice that needs to be taken to Yunnan? Who will manage it? Each situation was serious enough to overturn a sect. Since several such bombs were dropped on Mount Hua at the same time, it was total chaos. These kids! Seeing the hustle-bustle inside the sect, Hyun-Yong smiled. Why are you making such a fuss about this? Elder, isn't this a huge thing? This has never happened since I joined. Right, it hasn't. Hyun-Yong smiled more and more. At this point, it was so wide that it was almost reaching his ears. But Mount Hua didn't have our Chongmyeong before. Our Chongmyeong? It was the first time that the finance head was using such words, and his tone was, It is no surprise. Seriously, it's nothing. There will be many more surprises in the future, so why bother making a fuss now? Eunbang couldn't say anything. Seeing Hyun-Yong's face looking so happy, he couldn't help it. Breaking that happiness wasn't the right thing for a disciple to do. Crack! At that moment, the door to the finance office opened and a disciple came in with a large basket. Finance head, I brought it. Oh! Hyun-Yong jumped up and ran towards the disciple. And when the cloth over the huge basket was put aside, he saw large eels, ginseng, and Thai chickens. What is this? They must be exhausted from going to Yunnan, so wouldn't they feel better if we feed them something good, like chicken stew? But there are no eels in chicken stew. What? Why? Eunbang coughed a couple of times. This wasn't what was important now. No. It's true that Mount Hua doesn't forbid eating meat, but we are Taoists, and for us to do such things to living, it is fine. It'll be a meaningful death. They'll be happy too. Shouldn't you at least listen to the eel's opinion? Is it really fine with this? Hyun-Yong, who ignored those words, mumbled. Didn't the children return back with dead and exhausted faces? Mount Hua can only grow if Chongmyeong is well fed and raised. You're making them lazy. I wouldn't do such things for my own grandchildren. How can you compare things like grandchildren to Chongmyeong? He's hopeless. Anyway, you people take care of these things. I have other things to do. Us? Yes. Hyun-Yong turned away without listening to the words of the disciple. He then excitedly headed to the kitchen. Eunbang, who saw that, seemed shocked and sighed a little as he smiled. Does he like him this much? When he thought of Hyun-Yong in the past, all he could remember were his constant sighs. Hyun-Yong's daily routine was to look at the books all day, sigh, and ponder, and then sigh again. There were wrinkles on his forehead and his eyes were sunken. He was a person who was weighed down by the burden of having to feed the people on Mount Hua. That was the Hyun-Yong Eunbang could think of. So, seeing him happy and smiling made him feel better. A lot has changed. In the last 2 years, it felt like the entire sect had changed. Even he himself could feel it. When was the last time Hyun-Yong had smiled like this? Right. He knew that Hyun-Yong liked Chongmyeong, even more so than Eunbang himself, who had been serving Hyun-Yong since he entered Mount Hua. However, the reason why he didn't dislike the child was because he knew that everything he did helped Mount Hua in the end. Vice Pavilion Head, what do we do now? Are we really going to do this by ourselves? Eunbang frowned, seeing the disciples in shock. Stop whining. But how can we whine, even though we know that the medicine hall is busy? When the word medicine hall came in, the disciples all nodded their heads in agreement. They then looked at the medicine hall with pitiful eyes. Purple ginseng, 2 caddies, 3 nyangs. 2 caddies, 3 nyangs. They heard the sound of something being cut. Even by just listening to the instructions, it was clear that everything was being handled so carefully that even the possibility of an error would get discarded. 2 caddies, 3 nyangs. Bring it. Yes. A member of the medicine hall carefully grabbed the pieces. Here. Ungak, the head of the medicine hall, took them from the disciple's hand. He then carefully placed them on the scale. The moment the scale gave the right number, Ungak checked and said, I told you to cut me 2 caddies 3 nyangs worth. Why did you cut 4 nyangs? Are your eyes for decoration? No, that's not it. Do you know what could have happened? Because of you, the vitality. No, if this pill doesn't form correctly, will you take the responsibility for it, you frustrating fool? Anger exploded out like flames, and all the staff there bowed their heads. We have sinned. Are you saying that a disciple couldn't even measure a single thing properly? Well, on my scale, it was 2 caddies 3 nyang. What? Ungak seemed angry. However, before he could say anything, a voice was heard behind them. The scales are so old that they don't seem to show the right figure. Huh? Ungak turned his head. In front of him stood Tang Soso in the robes of Mount Hua, looking at the scales. It seems the problem is because the scales are old and they keep showing different numbers. We have to use one scale for all the calculations or replace all of the scales. Is that so? Yes, the most important thing is the ratio, but if we use scales with different numbers, there can be such errors. But using one scale would take too much time. Ungak shook his head. Go down to Huam and buy new scales right away. Right now, the money will be given by the finance pavilion. Yes, so one scale. What? What one scale? Change them all. Don't let a single old one stay. You go and buy them now, and get the right ones. Yes. The staff freaked out and ran out right away, not wanting to be yelled at again. Ungak rolled his eyes and shouted, Listen, everyone. Yes. The members of the hall responded with nervous faces. There was sweat glistening over their foreheads. The fate of Mount Hua is at stake. If anyone neglects their duties, even a single bit, I will throw you into the scariest peak we have here. Do you get it? Yes. This isn't easy. Of course, the process of making any pill was difficult. Everyone knew that there was no special training for it, so all they had to do was measure the ingredients in the right amount and follow the recipe Yakson had given them. The problem was the burden when it came to measuring the ingredients themselves. The soul vitality pill was so delicate that even one small change in the ratio could drastically drop the efficacy of the pill. It is a herb they brought all the way from Yunnan. I will not tolerate a single failure. Ungak took a deep breath. Still, I am glad to have the child with us. Mount Hua didn't have a single pill made in the last 100 years. In other words, there were no pills coming out of Mount Hua. Still, Ungak had learned to know how it was done in the medicine hall of the sect, and this was his first time making something so important with his own hands. Although I cannot disclose the entire recipe, but he still wanted to listen to the advice from Tang Soso, considering it had helped him till now. And it was also known that the soul vitality pill was tough to make. But there was another problem. Is anyone inside? The door opened and Hyunjung came in with Hyunsang. I greet the sect leader. All the members of the medicine hall bowed, and Hyunjung nodded with a smile. Right, everyone must be busy. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Ungak looked at Hyunjung. Sect leader, this is the 6th time you have come here, today alone. Why don't you just sit in the chair over there instead of opening the door each time? Hyunjung, who seemed to be looking around, lowered his gaze. Everyone seems to be so busy that they are unable to notice. But isn't there too much dust on the floor? I want to avoid such things contaminating the pill. If you leave the window open, insects might come in too. Yes. And if you have all the ingredients out in the open, they might change due to moisture. Eungak went silent. It's the 6th time. You have come 6 times back into my place to nag me, to tell me to clean up while working, and clean up before working. Sect leader. What is it? I will take good care of it. It isn't that I'm trying to overstep into the medicine hall head's position or anything. I am just too old and worry a lot. Seeing Hyunjong shy away, Eungak narrowed his eyes. I'd rather be cursed at. He felt weird as the man kept coming in again and again and used the same thing as an excuse. Right, then, the pill. How long will it take to perfectly produce it completely? 10 days. Is that so? Hyunjong frowned. His face said, No, my life seems to be hanging on a thin thread, but you want me to wait another 10 days. That was what it looked like he was asking Eungak from his face. Sect leader, most pills take at least 49 days to be prepared and another 49 days for maturation. However, unlike the others, our pill takes less time as its process is simple. Really? Hyunjong's face brightened. We will have to check the key in it, and that is the case where I need to personally check the key in the pill. So please. Right. I was wondering if I can do anything to help. I will do it myself. Right. Hyunjong glanced around with a shy face and coughed heavily several times. Right. Everyone worked hard. Thank you, Sect leader. Hyunjong went out with a sad face. As the door closed, one of the members said, He seems to have high expectations. Right. Seems like it. Think about it. How huge was this? It wasn't really weird for Hyunjong to act like this. He could understand it, but it was still a hindrance. They couldn't afford to distress or pressure those who were trying to get it done. Everyone, relax. We cannot fail. Yes, for the future of Mount Hua, we cannot fail. Eungak proudly said those words. Think about it. For this reason, Chongmyung traveled all the way to Yunnan. Yes, and if this fails, he will have to go back to Yunnan again. The atmosphere turned cold. Do you think he will just go calmly? That Chongmyung, he won't. All the people remember the scene of Chongmyung running around the medicine hall with his eyes rolled back like a crazy man. Their bodies shivered. We need to succeed. Even if we die, we have to succeed. Everyone concentrated as they looked at the materials. Eungak's eyes sunk low. I will bet everything here. The medicine hall was now filled with burning flames of passion.